Okay, we're back talking about Jonathan Edwards and religious affections. One major part of the book is a collection of 12 things that he would see in someone's life, and he would say, these are not sure signs that someone is a Christian. And number 11 is, we suppose that somebody would come into Pastor Edwards' study and he would say, I know I'm a Christian because I really think I'm a Christian. I have a lot of confidence that I'm a Christian. And so this obviously proves, Pastor Edwards, that I am a Christian, right? And Pastor Edwards would say, no, not necessarily. He would first say, it is good that you have assurance of salvation, or we ought to expect among true saints that they would have assurance of salvation. It seems that many of those who walked with the Lord, such as Moses or Noah, they seem to surely know that they were walking with the Lord. Job would say, I know my Redeemer lives. And so it's perfectly reasonable. Even when you read the Psalms, you would see David, and he seems to really know that he is the Lord's own child. And so this idea of confidence for God's people is to be expected. We could go to the New Testament and we could see Paul say, I've fought the good fight. I've kept the faith. And so he seemed to know that he really was a true child of God. And as a matter of fact, in another place, it speaks to maybe to all of us, saying we ought to work out our own salvation. And so there's this idea that we as Christians should have assurance of salvation. And one of the ways that he goes when he says, yes, we ought to have assurance of salvation, is he begins to point us to those things we ought to be looking for. He only spends a few minutes on it, or a few words on it in this chapter, but he says, you know you're a child of God by the love that you have for others. Or you know you're a child of God by the Spirit that he has put within you. And those are both from 1 John. And so what Edwards is saying here is, yes, if you're a true Christian, you probably will have assurance of salvation, or that's not to be that's to be expected, perhaps among true Christians. And yet, it's possible that you can be very confident and not be a Christian. And his main evidence here is the Pharisees. The Pharisees seem to have great confidence that they were right with God, and yet here they are talking to Jesus, and Jesus is saying, "You are far from God. You honor me with your lips, but your heart is far from me." And so we see here from the Bible itself that those who have confidence can, yes, sometimes be Christians, and yet sometimes they can be unbelievers. And this is a little bit of a longer section, and I'm not really going to explain everything that's in the section, but one thing that we do want to see is he talks about the problem of hypocrisy. So someone, that's the heading under which he's going to talk about those who think that they have salvation and don't. And he says, some people are going to be very confident, and it's really the presence of confidence, almost we should expect to see it in some unbelievers, because that's what Satan would want you to think. The people that Satan want to have confidence are unbelievers, because once you have confidence and you stop looking for fruit, and this is the direction that Edwards is heading, if you stop looking for fruit, then you'll never really find out that you're not a Christian. And so there's two areas that he presses on. There's a number of others, but two that I want to focus on. One is light. And by light, we just mean, are you seeing a growth in love for God in your life? He wants to, he says, a lot of people who are very confident that they are Christians never look to see if there's any love for God there. And among unbelievers who have confidence, they fail to examine whether or not they really love God or care about God's Word or want to grow in the knowledge of God's Word. They are just very confident, and that aspect of their life is non-existent. And he says that's a big mistake. The second area where they don't look is in the area of darkness, or that is the darkness being pushed back. What do they do? And really what we're getting at here is, what do they do about their sin? And again, unbelievers who are quite confident that they're Christians are not bothered by the sin that's in their life. And he would say, well, a true Christian, when that darkness begins to encroach in their life a bit, would be concerned about that, would love God and not want to dishonor God, and would begin to push back, by God's help, against that. And so to this person who has false confidence, he says, well, you're probably ignoring light, like you don't love God much and you you're not really noticing it, and you're not worrying about darkness. There is a fair bit of sin in your life, and you're, again, not concerned about it. And so, really, we kind of come around to the end to basically see maybe an exhortation to everybody. Look for, when you think about whether or not you are saved or do you have assurance of salvation, look for the presence of light. Can you see that there is a love for God there? And look for a growing absence of darkness. Darkness is being pushed back because you're battling sin. And if this happens by the power of God's Spirit in your life, then you ought to have confidence. And if these are things that are not on your radar screen, you're not worried about, you're not concerned about, then you might think, yes, you're confident, but maybe your confidence is placed in the wrong things.